Hi, geometry students. So today we're going to continue learning our shared language of symbols, and we're going to learn we're going to define and learn how to name segments, rays, and we're going to talk about opposite rays. So a segment is a part of a line that consists of two endpoints and then all the points in between. So it's just a part of a line. It does not extend infinitely in each direction. And so when you name it, you have to use the endpoints to name it. Now the order doesn't matter, you can name it AB or BA, but what you have to remember is because A and B represent points, they have to be capital letters, and because it's a segment, not a line, you have to put a different symbol above those two letters. It has to be a little line segment symbol with no arrowheads. What about array? Now look at array. You could think of array as half a line, although you can't take half of something infinite. And you can see that array will continue on infinitely in one direction, but it does have a starting point or an end point. So in this case, the end point is A, and then it passes through B on its way to infinity. So array is a part of a line that consists of an endpoint and then all the points on one side of that line. Now, when you name array, you have to start with the endpoint. After that, you can pick any point it goes through on its way to infinity. So in this case, I have to start with the endpoint A, but then I can use any point. In this case, B is the only other named point. So AB, and then look, notice this, the symbol is an arrow heading to the right with just one arrowhead. So for example, what is this green thing? The green thing represents a segment. And so how would you name that? The segment you would name by just using the endpoints. So you could either name it SR or you could name it RS and put the segment symbol above it. How about this thing that's shaded purple? This represents a ray. It has a definite endpoint, and then it goes through another point on its way, through all these points on its way to infinity in this direction. And so to name the ray, you have to start with the endpoint, T, and then you name any point, U, on its way to infinity. So, and then you have to use the ray symbol above it. So you pause the video and you try to name the red and the blue shaded objects. The blue is a ray. The endpoint is Q. So when I name it, I have to start with Q and then name any point it goes through on its way to infinity, QR. Notice, even though the ray goes to the left, the symbol is still consistently with the arrowhead on the right, because that's the way we name the ray. You start with the endpoint and then any point it goes through on its way to infinity. What about red? The red is a segment, so we have to name it using the endpoints. We can either name it TQ or we could have named it QT with the segment symbol above. What are opposite rays? Opposite rays are two rays that have the same endpoint, but they go in exactly opposite directions. Together they form a line. So how do you name opposite rays? Just the same way you name any rays. You start with the endpoint and then whatever point they go through on the way to infinity. So for example, this blue ray and this red ray are opposite rays because they share endpoint C and they go in opposite directions, but when you put them together, they form a line. So these are, the red and blue are opposite rays. This ray would be named CB and the red ray would be named CA. But notice, CA still has the arrowhead going to the right, CB also, because that's how you name the ray. So let's practice. Pause the video and write on your own piece of paper a pair of opposite rays. You can find a pair of opposite rays that have endpoint S, and you can find a pair of opposite rays that have endpoint P. If you want to find a pair of opposite rays with endpoint S, you could say SQ or SP. What about if the endpoint is P? You could say PQ or PR. Question, are rays AX and AY opposite rays? Pause and answer that and then press play. So if they were opposite rays, they'd share an endpoint, they'd go in opposite directions, and together they'd form a line. Let's see if they do. Let's see if that's true. AX and AY share endpoint A. They go in opposite directions, and together they form a line. So yes, these are opposite rays. All right, now pause and on your own paper, name opposite rays with endpoint B. BA and BC, or you could name it BD, that's the same ray. All right, let's answer this question. Pause and decide yes or no, and then press play for the answer. Ray BA, so endpoint B going through A, and AB. Well, together they would form a line, but they do not share the same endpoint. And we know that in order to be opposite rays, you have to share the same endpoint and together form a line. And you have to meet both those criteria. And so these are not opposite rays. And that does it for this video. So I'll leave you with this puppy and I'll wish you a wonderful day.